and I believe that most of you have a written copy of the release. We're really excited to form the first ever gay caucus for the city of Chicago. My name is Tom Tunney, and I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. So, starting with James.
Neighboring ward, Alderman James Kappelman, 46.
I'm Raymond Lopez, Alderman of the 15th Ward.
Carlos Ramirez Rosa, 35th Ward.
Alderman Deb Mell, 33rd Ward.
And Tom Tunney from the 44th Ward. So it was almost 13 years ago that I had the opportunity to reach a milestone for our city of being the first openly gay Chicago elected official. Preceding me was Larry McKeon, who was the first state rep in Illinois history, I believe, and then subsequent to that, currently Greg Harris, and among others, Kelly Cassidy and such. Our role here of forming the caucus here is to represent the true solidarity and importance of the gay community for our city. I believe, as you get to know each of us, that we represent the diversity of thought on the council, and that's healthy, and that's good. We are in the formative stages, so our objective is to really listen to our communities, not only in our ward, but our LGBT community, and how we forge a better quality of life for all citizens, but specifically LGBT citizens and residents, for that matter. We historically have been working on bullying issues, public education issues, obviously transgender issues in addition to lesbian and gay, bisexual issues, HIV funding, and a myriad of other issues. But I think having more of our colleagues spread all over the city will help us with a more inclusive agenda. And I think there's been a great interest from a number of our colleagues to join, and we're going to get this group in formation, and we'll work collectively, especially through the budget process, because that's the set of priorities for our city, and we want to make sure that not only our wards are serviced properly, but our constituencies and our LGBT community are at the table. So, as I said, who would have thought we would be in a position today? I know there'll be some questions and answers, but I would defer to any of my colleagues, and we'll start with our vice chair, if you so choose, Alderman Deb Mell.
Oh, well,
she wants to add comment before Q&A.
Okay, sure. I'm just, really thrilled. It's really still amazing to me how far we've come in such a short time, but I do want to recognize those who've definitely come before us, for Anita Gray, and all the other activists that have been, blazing this trail. Windy City Times, and their congratulations on your 30 years, and we're really just ready to get to work and to work for our own constituencies, and then the community. And I was really thrilled with this last election because, I felt like it was kind of James and Tom up on the lakefront there, and then kind of me up, like a lot of times I'm like, there's a city past, Ashland, west of Ashland, and then when this past election, they have Carlos right next to me on the west, in a whole different part of the city. So I think, and then Raymond in his area there, it's really amazing, and I'm really proud to be on the caucus, and I look forward to really getting some good work done.
Carlos?
So it's really exciting to be with a group of individuals that share experiences and that share a commitment to advance the interests of our community and of all Chicagoans. 1 is the loneliest number, 5 is not as lonely, but this is definitely historic for the city of Chicago, and it shows all the work that's been done by trailblazers. But there's also a lot more work to be done. So we're going to be working together to craft ordinances and to craft solutions that will uplift LGBT people of all backgrounds from all places of the city, and that will ultimately serve our city's interests as a whole.
I think it's a remarkable testament to our city that now, especially with the formation of this caucus, all of us here, that LGBT issues, especially with joining of this group and being elected by my ward, it's no longer just a north side issue. We finally have testament and recognition that, and can bring the message that LGBT is a citywide issue. There are citywide recognition of the issues that impact the LGBT community that it seems to be forgotten on the south side or ignored or just generally not recognized. So now that conversation, that dynamic changes, and more importantly, the buying in and the ownership of the LGBT community isn't just to the north side. The south side now lends itself to the causes, and I'm excited to be a part of that. And thank you again, like Deb said, to everyone whose shoulders we stand on, particularly the gentleman to my right.
Yeah.
You held down the fort till the rest of us could get here, so thank you.
James?
The one thing that we do all have in common is that all of us were very active for LGBT causes before we were ever elected. So that was something that was important to all of us. When I moved to Chicago, I lived in Lakeview because that's where the LGBT community had to live, because that's where we were safe. This is at a time when all of my friends have experienced some type of discrimination, and most of my friends have been beaten up or have been threatened with violence, and I am among those people who've also been threatened with violence and who feared for my own safety. I changed my career as a teacher because I knew I could be fired. This was back in the 1980s. So we have made huge strides. The fact now that there's 5 aldermen spread throughout the city of Chicago who are being a voice for the LGBT community is incredible. I'm just immensely pleased by that, and I look forward to working with these 4 other fine aldermen to continue to be that voice that still needs to be heard, because, as Carlos has said, there's still much more work that needs to be done.
So with that, I think we'll open up for questions. I think the
Tracy, we'll give you the first one.
2 areas of interest are, one is the larger violence against the transgender community in the city of Chicago, and talking about working in coalition with other alderpersons, including Alderman Emma Mitz, who's talked about working on this issue. And the second one is overall youth homelessness, and the fact that 40% of those youth are LGBTQ. So is that, those 2 areas, things that you could expand on a little bit? But what your interest as a caucus might be?
Well, I would say all of those issues and many more, number one. But I'm going to ask James to talk a little bit about the homeless issue and how it affects his ward and our city.
Well, we know that there's a disproportionate number of individuals who are teenagers and youth that are experiencing homelessness, and that speaks to the discrimination that we experience as a society as members of the LGBT community. So I continue, and I know all of us continue to work with Department of Family Support Services and Department of Public Health to be advocates, and the mayor's office to be advocates. We want to make sure that we do a better job of coordinating those services, and that because of all the cuts that are being that are occurring in federal government and state, county, and city, it's time for us to act very efficiently. We have to be very focused on clear outcome measures so that we can be the best advocates we can.
And transgender?
Well, I'll say, violence against any community is horrid. Violence against people because of their gender identity is inexcusable. It's unjust, and it's a serious issue that we face here in the city of Chicago and all across this nation. So I think that's why this caucus exists, right? We exist. We're not just the gay caucus. We're not just the lesbian caucus. We're the LGBT caucus. And so we're going to stand up for issues of trans justice, and we're going to make sure that we're working with all 50 city council members to bring about protections for that community.
Talk about the historic aspect of this. When you mentioned 13 years, I mean, it's been 13 years ago when you came into office. How historic is this that, again, all 5 of you are sitting here and being able to express this openly, and not just being open about it, but know that your work together as a group will be able to help the LGBT community?
The other thing to keep in notice of is that when we ran for alderman, the fact that we were openly LGBTQ was not an issue. That was powerful. That did not need to come up in our campaigns. None of us needed to mention from the rooftops, that we're LGBTQ.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I ran for state rep, same thing. You know, and then the 40th district is, you know, it's kind of considered, you know, it's a lot of families, a lot of older people, and you know, it's highly Catholic over there, and it didn't come up at all, and that was 2008. So, and it's just, and like James said, it wasn't an issue of my race.
Well, for you though, 13 years ago, and then.
It was an issue.
The question was for me to begin with, but
So you're the trailblazer. So
Oh, no, I'm not the trailblazer, you know. As far as city council is concerned though, and Tracy can probably go back to her records there. 2003 was not, we should have been in the city council many years before. And we had the campaign of Ron Sable in 1987, which was very close to winning the 44th ward, but empowered a whole sense of community and created some of the PACs to create awareness, money, and groom candidates. So, you know, it took a long time for us. Larry McKeon predated, I don't know what year that was, but
Tom Keola was the first openly elected
on the judge
official.
side.
On the judge side,
right?
yeah.
So there's been a lot of commanding the resources, and winning is amazing. I can tell you, as I told the other aldermen here, that honeymoon is about 2 weeks on the gay thing. Okay. Okay. People want their services. They want their aldermen to represent all communities. You know, I had the unique opportunity to be on the small business side of constituency groups too, and I think that people look at all of us as their moral values, their values and commitment to community. And I think the historic part of it is, as James said and Deborah says, at least in Chicago, and I can't really speak for outside of major urban areas, gay and lesbian, transgender, you know, that's an interesting introduction, but what are you standing for? What's your legislation? What are your priorities? How are you listening to the community? So that part is kind of amazing that at least in major urban cities that might not be the obstacle it was a generation ago, or in this case maybe 15 years ago.
Tell me this, what is your goal when it comes to, I mean, you spoke about the issues and what you're looking at in terms of the LGBT community, but when it comes to major issues that you really want to have a collaborative effort, are you going to be kind of looking at that as a way you can join your votes together?
Well, budget.
Right?
Budget is a set of priorities.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, budget. The budget season is priorities. It's a blueprint for how, and our values, and what we want to do for our city. And I think the combination of the five of us with a number of aldermen that really, at least in my opinion, have gotten it over the years, in the 12 years that I've been here. It's nice to have, as aldermen say, if there's a gay issue, go talk to Tunney. You know, it's not that's kind of what it was to start. You're talking about HIV issues, well, let's talk to Alderman Tunney. But it seems to me that in most parts of the city, the gay and lesbian health-related issues, education issues, towards LGBT are common issues for our entire city. So I think it was evidenced by the campaign. There was a number of issues where certain aldermen didn't feel like they were as adept on LGBT issues. But I think most of the aldermen have really kept a very progressive agenda. But I believe that the most important thing we can do is to listen to our LGBT community, to work in a very synergistic way when it comes to budgets, and also I think working with our schools. You know, and how do we expand the curriculum and just tolerance as so many of us witness in our neighborhoods now, or the violence, as Alderman Rosso said.
When you're speaking about the budget, though, what in particular do you want to see funding towards when it comes to LGBT causes and different things in the community, like maybe centers, things like that?
Well, we were able in this past year to open up LGBT senior affordable housing. I can tell you a number of my colleagues would love to have a little project like that underway. It took a number of years to get going. But literally, I'm sure HIV funding and generally health-related issues, women's issues, lesbian issues that are that Deborah can speak probably better at. But primarily health
Homeless
education.
services, homeless services, transitional housing, case management.
Right. Which, by the way, in terms of, as Tracy and many of you know, that we have expanded these services over the years. Not enough, trust me, but having overnight shelters, much more inclusive, beds, for youth, which as we've identified, that it seems to be at least 50% might be LGBT identified. And so when we're helping homelessness, we're helping our LGBT community. And homelessness is certainly a citywide issue.
I have a person in my ward right now who's homeless, who's transgender. And it's been very difficult to place this person in a shelter because sometimes this person identifies as a woman and sometimes this person identifies as a man. And we're, as a city, we've not come up with a way of addressing that. And those issues are all over, but we need now as a city to address that.
Do you feel the answer is trying to get funding to have a center that's specifically for transgender then?
I want a way that we can address homelessness that includes addressing the needs of those who are transgender and gender neutral and gender questioning.
Go ahead, Matt, Ted, do you guys have?
So questions were asked. I do have one question. Safety seems to be a pretty big priority for you guys, and are you hoping to set up meetings with reps at CPD or to kind of have a closer relationship with CPD when it comes to training and how they should interact with?
Alderman Tunney and I already have quite a bit of interactions with the 19th district, and so.
Well, we've been working on public policy, especially transgender and handling
Right.
of people arrested, how they're handled, how they're housed, and the criminal justice system. Most of us really need to, if not already have, a working relationship not only with their commander, but with their superintendent, because every community is looking for more resources. And we need to continue to work on the training. And that's just more than LGBT issues. But how do we handle the criminal justice system? You see that on the page every day about reevaluating juvenile for sure. But we've got a lot of work to do with the police department, and our LGBT voice will be there for sure. And I think the commander, and not the commander, but the superintendent actually has been very open to meeting with us, with him and his staff.
I would have one question about, we're Pride Fest weekend and Pride Parade coming up, so to the two aldermen that have that in their ward, do you have anything you want to say to the LGBT and allies that are coming into your wards?
Well, I will say that this parade is for every Chicagoan and seems to be a suburban and Midwest attraction. But it is, in both of our neighborhoods, highly congested, very residential, and a great tourist area. We want to keep it safe. And those visitors and our community, I think the most important thing about Pride is respect, and respect goes not only for how we treat each other, but how we treat communities. And we're in some ways at a tipping point. This parade has gone from, in the 13 years that I've been alderman, from maybe a $250,000 to now close to $1 million. We, a few years ago, with James's help, changed the route to reflect the growing sense of community. And they're really, logistically, we can handle the parade. It's really, I think, the 36 hours of a weekend. And I think what we have certainly gotten a lot of support from the police in terms of resources. But we want to make sure that we can get our neighborhood back to some semblance sooner than what we've been doing it in the past, and safer.
I've been marching in this parade for 28 years now, and it has grown easily tenfold since that time. And so with that, there are growing pains, and so Alderman Tunney and I are working with other community organizers and the police to address those growing pains, to make it, as we want to celebrate, especially with the Supreme Court. We're hoping makes a ruling very close to that time for marriage equality, but it has to be safe as well.
Time for one or two more?
No.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that anybody wants to add?
Well, we're going to have another press conference in regards to the parade.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, our message out there is act responsibly. If this is about pride, show your pride and respect, whether you're LGBT or not. Because, you know, in some of my residents' minds, people think this event is out of control. And it needs to get back into some control mechanism here. And we've worked, and there are huge amount of resources here to make this parade safe and successful. And I want to keep it in our neighborhood, in our neighborhoods. But I also want to make sure that we're asking some of our liquor establishments to close earlier for this event, and to really try to give, the police resources are stretched. They're working 12, 14-hour days, so that's not good for the police and it's not good for the community. What we're trying to do is tighten it up and try to get our neighborhood back into some kind of order sooner than later, and also get it cleaned up. You know, our goal is to, the following morning people didn't realize it was a parade, like we did for the Hawks a couple of nights ago. And so, you know, it has really gotten of national significance, you know, in terms of Chicago being the epicenter in the Midwest, and we want to make sure that we're talking about celebration, not about tragedy.
You have a good point, if I just may add this. I mean, just like chatting now, because this conference over, but in Beverly, because I covered a story there where they completely changed, because, you know, they stopped the St. Patrick's Day celebrations period, or weekend celebrations, and they did the same thing where they made it a priority for anyone who bought alcohol. Guess what? You don't go back outside. You finish it here, and then you can leave. And then they were all closing at a certain time, and it made a huge difference. Everything was more family friendly, a lot calmer, and it wasn't out of control.
The biggest concern is really
just an idea.
The biggest concern is the amount of alcohol being brought, not only bought in the package, but brought.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and that, you know, the police have an issue about, yes, you cannot be drinking with open containers on the public way. But if you're transporting and it's in sealed containers, it's a different story. So I'm not going to, the police will have their own comments on that, but it really is, when you come into the neighborhood, there's plenty of establishments here that you could patronize, but bringing in large amounts of alcohol is only going to get everybody in trouble.
So, I mean,
And don't forget, they had to do it almost like a 2-year
Hiatus.
hiatus. of that
Right,
parade.
I know. They
So
stopped it.
the message,
Until they figured it out.
to all the pride attendees would be, if we don't want to have to hit the reset button,
Right?
we need to
Tighten it
tone
up.
it down ourselves.
Well, again, I think it's respect.
well, in a way, it's kind of a good problem to have, right? Because
The mainstreaming.
yeah, I mean, it's exciting, and you know, we see other countries just having their first parade and stuff like that, and we're discussing. There's too many people coming to ours, so.
Too many people in our neighborhood again.
So, and hey, if you ever want to bring it out to the 33rd Ward, we'll take it, right?
Carlos left.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Pride Day, the parade is always. I mean, it's something. You know, it's just that your neighborhoods are just, you know,
Well, remember, it's Pride Month.
electric.
It's Pride
Yeah.
Month. There's a lot of important events going on, including LGBT history, the Hall of Fame event, the Legacy Walk. I mean, there's just, you know, almost every day during the month there's something significant for LGBT and the entire city to observe and to learn more.
Great, thank you guys very much.